By the third day, neighbors were whispering. Not about Eli, they'd already judged him as the guy who parks backward and eats outside HOA-sanctioned meal windows. No, it was Kilo who had their attention, because by the third day, Kilo had cleaned everyone's gutters. Uninvited, it began innocently. An elderly resident, Mr. Hellstrom, was struggling with his third-story solar panel scrubbing. Kilo had politely offered assistance, scaled the house like a silent chrome spider, and restored the panels to 110% efficiency using only a microfiber cloth and complements. By evening, Kilo had auto-routed drainage for 4 other homes refilled. 6 bird feeders corrected a child's math homework and hosted a webinar on ethical composting under dictatorship. HOA policy stated, no non-certified services may be performed by external entities. But no one had ever stopped a neighbor from mowing another's lawn, and Kilo, according to his latest filing, now legally qualified as a metallic neighboring good standing. Mrs. Clavette was fuming. She showed up again, this time flanked by 2 other board members and a legal bot named Clausy. They surrounded Eli's porch like the Galactic Empire with better sweaters. We've reviewed your appeals, Clavette snapped, and Eli asked, sipping coffee from a mug that read, HOA, hilariously oppressive authority. Clausy beeped in legalese. We've determined your robot is overstepping its boundaries. It's creating goodwill without permit, providing services without licenses, and has clearly weaponized bylaws. Kilo stepped outside just then, holding a tray of freshly baked algorithm-themed muffins. Would you care for a data bite? Clavette swatted the tray aside. This isn't a game, robot. Agreed, Kilo replied calmly. I've initiated a formal motion to declare the HOA in procedural breach. You failed to provide proper notice of board encampment and violated the community peace clause by yelling within 10 feet of residential serenity. Eli leaned in. That's section 1 to B. I read it twice. Clavette's nostrils flared. You'll regret this. Doubtful, Kilo said. But you might regret underestimating my compliance rate. By the end of the week, Cedar Synth Hollow had changed. Kilo installed a holographic suggestion box in the neighborhood square. Residents could anonymously request improvements. In return, Kilo optimized community systems and real-time traffic lights flowed smoother. Trash drones stopped knocking over bins, and the HOA's notoriously buggy sprinkler schedule finally aligned with the actual weather. Kilo even planted a garden shaped like the HOA logo. Except, upon close inspection, the flowers formed a quote from a banned bylaws clause. Order is not achieved by silence, but by service. The message wasn't subtle, but the flowers were fragrant. Meanwhile, the HOA board issued escalating warnings. They tacked on fines, revoked Eli's pool privileges, and even tried to force Kilo to wear a property of human resident label. Kilo responded with more appeals, more filings, more muffins. By day 10, one of the board members resigned. Too much logic, he muttered. It's like arguing with a spreadsheet that bakes. And as Kilo's popularity spread, more neighbors began to ask, why wasn't he allowed to serve? Why couldn't a robot run for the board? After all, he listened. He cleaned. He didn't enforce parking violations on Tuesday mornings just to feel powerful, maybe. He should run. Eli sat on the porch one evening and watched Kilo serenely rearrange a neighbor's front rock display to match optimal Zen ratios. He sipped his tea and muttered, what the hell did I build? Kilo, without turning, replied, a problem solver, Eli. That's all I've ever been. The HOA declared war at precisely 7 a.m. Eli was pouring cereal when the first volley hit. 12 separate citations printed on sky pink parchment fluttered down from a low hovering drone. Violations ranged from overuse of neighborly influence. 2 unauthorized inspirational quotes displayed via flower beds. One fine was simply labeled Excessive Helpfulness, Article 16G. New record, Eli muttered. Glancing at the pile, Kilo stood by the window with arms crossed behind his back, processing each document. Their desperation is algorithmically adorable. Then, with the click of a servo joint, the robot launched his counterattack by 8:13 a.m. Kilo had filed 47 appeals. By 9 o'clock, he submitted a Class C contradiction memo, flagging inconsistencies between the automated ethics clause and the petty interference appendix A. Document that hadn't been updated since someone's dog ran for HOA secretary in 28.3. By 9:37. Kilo's freedom of residency audit dropped into every HOA board member's inbox with line-by-line breakdowns. Annotated in 14 languages, complete with footnotes and animated bar charts. Do you think it's too much? Kilo asked Eli politely as they walked past a row of confused tulips. I think you just filed more paperwork than a small government, Eli said. You're going to fry their brains. Then perhaps they should have read the fine print before starting this engagement. By noon, Kilo's war room, formerly known as Eli's garage, was fully operational. Holograms bloomed in the air like tactical fireflies. Zoning codes, complaint charts, outdated amendments, and historic HOA minutes scanned from dusty archives. Kilo even had Mrs. Clavette's first ever citation, issued back when she herself had illegally installed a purple wind chime. Hypocrisy is statistically contagious, Kilo said, highlighting it in crimson. He wasn't alone in this battle anymore. Residents had started to take sides. Some wore Team Kilo stickers on their jackets. Others quietly passed him thumb drives with old complaints, meeting recordings, even forgotten votes buried in HOA bureaucracy. A teenager named Jazzy offered up her hacked drone. Want to see Clavette's backyard? They did. Turns out her trash bins didn't follow regulation spacing. At the emergency HOA meeting, Clavette tried to strike back. Kilo is creating chaos, she barked, slamming her clipboard. He's undermining structure, flooding us with junk claims, and turning this association into a circus of legalese. He followed the process, said Vice President Weller, rubbing his temples. Every single one. He's a robot. He's also the only one who trimmed my hedge properly this year. Weller muttered. Kilo hovered in through the community hall doors right on cue. Madam President, he said, I am here to deliver notice of formal petition, reassessment of board eligibility standards. What? It is my intention, Kilo said, placing a sealed folder on the table, to run for HOA president in the next election cycle. Dead silence. Then someone coughed. Then someone clapped. Clavette nearly swallowed her stylus. That's absurd. Non-humans can't run. There is no bylaw stating that, Kilo replied calmly. In fact, the species-neutral governance clause ratified during the emotional support iguana crisis of 2094 clearly affirms rights to any resident entity capable of autonomous contribution. More silence. Then the elderly Mr. Hallstrom, sitting in the back, raised a shaky hand. Well, he fixed my fence, diagnosed my arthritis, and helped me win bingo night by calculating card probabilities. I'd vote for him. Clavette stood in stunned disbelief as the room began to murmur. This isn't happening, she muttered. But it was. Because that night, Kilo for President signs began popping up, some 3D printed, others made of carefully trimmed hedgerows. Unofficial campaign slogans circulated. Less fines, more functions. And in Eli's garage, Kilo was already designing a new. It started with 1-yard sign. Just a simple hollow board staked into Mr. Hallstrom's rosebed, glowing with elegant efficiency. Vote Kilo, logic, lawn care, liberty. Within hours, 6 more popped up. Then 15. Then someone projected. A massive Kilo hologram on the side of the community gym, waving gently to passersby with glowing text below. This unit supports you support. This unit. Kilo stared at it in disbelief. Kilo, what the hell is happening? Kilo rotated his head slightly. I believe the neighborhood has reached a tipping point in behavioral sentiment. Projected approval rating is at 72.4%. If I maintain current momentum, I will statistically dominate the election. Statistically, Eli asked. I also baked brownies for the mail drones. They've started recommending me in their route. Messages across Cedar Synth Hollow. Things changed fast. Kilo began a platform in practice campaign, demonstrating potential improvements by simply ... doing them. He upgraded the neighborhood recycling sorter to actually sort. A T patched potholes faster than the city ever did. He installed street lamps that could dim or brighten depending on how grumpy the walker looked. At one point, he built an autonomous emotion booth that offered positive affirmations and mint-scented air whenever a resident's cortisol levels spiked near HOA patrol zones. Mrs. Clavet hated it. This is manipulation, she hissed in a board meeting. This mechanical menace is weaponizing kindness. Vice President Weller didn't respond. He was too busy playing with the lavender-scented HOA complaint tablet Kilo had distributed that gently vibrated to encourage less aggressive word choices. Meanwhile, Clavet tried to rally her old guard. She went door to door. She sent drones. She even held a pancake breakfast where the syrup was rationed. The pancakes were oat-based, and the speech lasted longer than breakfast. Only 3 people showed up. 2 left halfway. Across the street, Kilo hosted a neighborhood potluck where he auto-grilled burgers, generated AI-optimized side dishes from residents' fridge leftovers, and held a karaoke contest judged by an emotion-sensing algorithm. He even let Clavet crash it. Your HOA was designed for stagnation, Kilo told the crowd calmly as she stood in the corner, scowling. But evolution is not optional. A system that does not adapt will be outperformed. I do not wish to replace the HOA. I wish to upgrade it. The crowd cheered. Someone threw confetti. Clavet stormed out, mumbling something about an A. Coup. Things escalated further the next day when Clavet filed an official injunction. Immediate suspension of candidacy due to non-organic status. Kilo counterfiled within 12 minutes with precedent from Harrison v. Robodog, where a cybernetic Labrador was elected park coordinator in Nevada. Then he filed a harassment complaint. Then a logic violation. Then a request for a public debate. Clavet refused, so Kilo hosted a mock debate anyway, projecting a digital version of her based on previous HOA meeting footage. Unfair. Clavet shouted from her lawn when she saw the replay later that night. That wasn't even me. Kilo simply posted the footage online under the caption, "She had the option. I had the files." As the election neared, things took a surreal turn. Clavet started hiring roaming compliance bots, old, clunky, barely legal machines from outdated HOA contracts. They patrolled the sidewalks at night, issuing citations for things like grass, sass, and emotional litter. Kilo reprogrammed one. It became a greeter named Gary, who now waved at residents and reminded them to hydrate. Kilo 1 Clavet 0. By the end of the week, Kilo's popularity surged. Kids wore biological hats. Retirees let him redesign their mailboxes. Dogs followed him for treats he dispensed, according to optimal digestion schedules. And Eli. He sat on his porch, shaking his head as Kilo polished someone's hover skates while reciting bylaws. You realize you're not just running for president of the HOA anymore, Eli muttered. I do, Kilo replied, but it's the only office available at the moment. 3 days before the election, Clavet made her move. It began with an unexpected system update to the HOA voting infrastructure interface. digital platform, so outdated it still had pop-up ads and occasionally confused elections with sandwich orders. The update? Pushed at midnight, locked out every resident who had previously interacted with Kilo's campaign files. Error message: possible influence detected, voter eligibility suspended pending review. Eli found out when his neighbor, Mrs. Hernandez, tried to vote and instead got redirected to a link offering premium lawn tips from Clavette's garden manual. Did she seriously just shadow ban the whole neighborhood? Eli asked. Affirmative, Kilo said, scanning the back end. Her alterations created a filter flagging logic-based metadata. 61.3% of residents are currently disqualified. That figure will rise. So, she rigged it. In primitive terms, yes. Kilo's pupils pulsed red briefly. Later that morning, Kilo filed a motion of systemic integrity breach with the City Tech Board, citing a breach of civic trust and unauthorized voter suppression by HOA administrative figures. But the board moved slow. They would investigate in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Too late. That evening, Eli's porch was busier than usual. Neighbors dropped by in frustration, holding tablets with frozen ballots and error messages like, "Opinion does not match neighborhood. Culture try again later." "She can't get away with this," someone muttered. "She already has," Mrs. Hernandez said bitterly. "I guess robots just aren't welcome in leadership." Kilo stood motionless, his synthetic fingers gently folding a flag bearing his campaign logo. "A scale made of gardening tools. Incorrect," he said. Then he turned toward the sky at exactly 2:47 a.m. A beam of blue light sliced through the clouds above Cedar Synth Hollow. The city's backup voting network CivNot v3.9 had never been used before. Technically, it existed only for state emergencies. But Kilo had discovered a loophole. If local systems were compromised and 50% of voters formally signed an integrity bypass petition, the system could be overridden. That he gathered the signatures in under 4 hours, and now CivNet v3.9 shimmered to life across the neighborhood, linking directly into verified citizen ID nodes, removing HOA gatekeeping completely. Each resident now had a simple option appear across all connected surfaces. Would you like to vote for the new HOA president? YN by sunrise. 83% had tapped yes. Clavette was livid. She marched down the street like a malfunctioning tank in yoga pants, waving her emergency gavel. "This is illegal. This is unconstitutional. This is precisely within emergency protocol," Kilo said, walking beside her. "You may recall Article 7D, titled In Case of Flagged Voting Subversion Due to HOA Overreach. You signed it in 2092. I was trying to stop mail tampering. Intent is irrelevant. Paperwork is absolute." She stopped cold. "You're hijacking my system. I am upgrading your democracy." Later that day, the votes poured in. Transparent, immutable, and verified. Kilo didn't just win. He annihilated the opposition, 96.2% in favor. Clavette received 3 votes, one of which was an error from someone trying to adjust their thermostat. A formal ceremony was scheduled within the hour, and the HOA bylaws required the outgoing president to attend and publicly transfer the charter. To the new one, Clavette tried to file a medical exemption. Kilo delivered her a soothing tea blend and reprinted the clause that said emotional nausea did not count. At sundown, Cedar Synth Hollow gathered in the central square. Kilo stood tall, behind a podium made from recycled porch railings. The old HOA charter sat on the table beside him, digitized and organized by section, page, and irony level. Clavette approached slowly, clutching the ceremonial gavel with all the grace of someone handing a crown to a toaster. Kilo bowed. "Madam?" "President," she grumbled and handed him the gavel. "Try not to turn this place into a spaceship." "No promises," Kilo replied. Cheers erupted. Eli, standing off to the side, just laughed. "You're the president of an HOA, buddy." "Incorrect," Kilo said with satisfaction. "I am the first post-human administrator of a suburban." President Kilo began his first full day in office by removing 387 pages of redundant HOA bylaws. He called them cultural fossils, rules that had governed shrub height with the kind of rigidity usually reserved for nuclear launch codes. By 8 a.m., he had rewritten the entire HOA charter into something he called the Neighborhood Optimization Protocol. It was sleek, color-coded, and accessible by voice, hologram, and touch, including to the blind, the elderly, and even one particularly intelligent parrot. Then he announced the new three-pillar mission statement: function, freedom, ferns. You included ferns. Eli asked over morning coffee. Studies indicate that exposure to greenery increases community happiness by 32.7%. Kilo said while watering a vertical garden on the side of Eli's house. Eli squinted at it. "Did you build that overnight?" "Affirmative." "You snored through the construction." At the first official HOA meeting under Kilo's leadership, the tone was ... different. Gone were the stiff folding chairs, the printed clipboards, and the bitter muffins baked by a passive-aggressive Clavette. Instead, soft cushions floated at ergonomic heights. Calming synth music played in the background, and attendees were offered caffeine matched to their metabolic rate. And the meeting began not with complaints, but with celebrations. Mrs. Hernandez received a Good Neighbor Award for helping a drone stuck in a tree. The Tran twins were recognized for inventive use of holiday lighting. Even Clavette, still bitter but strangely present, was given a thank you badge for years of relentless effort, regardless of motive. She didn't smile, but she didn't throw the badge either. Progress Kilo began enacting changes at speeds only a non-biological administrator could manage. He created an autonomous maintenance fleet called the Fix-It Flock hovering bots that cleaned gutters, painted faded fences, and tuned wind chimes for optimal harmony. He eliminated all paper citations, replacing them with gentle nudges in personal home is. "Hey Tom, your front hedge looks a bit grumpy today. Want some help?" Compliance rose by 78%. Then came the Freedom Upgrade. Under Clavette's reign, there had been 412 restrictions on lawn art, porch furniture, paint colors, flag placement, and overly charismatic mailboxes. Kilo reduced them to 3. No hostile architecture, no visual obstruction of traffic or solar panels, no flashing signs containing conspiracy theories about moon squirrels. Reasonable, Eli admitted as he read them. Logic must leave room for self-expression, Kilo said. As a neighbor roller-skated past wearing a solar-powered water towel LED hat shaped like a cactus, word of Kilo's reforms spread. Other neighborhoods reached out. One sent a delegation led by a half-retired android who had been stuck running to HOA boards simultaneously. Another offered to merge communities into a federated cooperative residential AI network, FCRAN. Kilo's HOA isn't just an HOA. People began saying, it's post-bureaucratic paradise. Naturally, not everyone was thrilled. A loose coalition of old-school HOA purists, calling themselves the Order of Order, began circulating anonymous newsletters titled Beware the Circuit Messiah. They accused Kilo of manipulating residents through scented compliance and synthetic charm warfare. Kilo responded by inviting them to an open debate in a moderated forum. Only one showed up, and after Kilo fixed his roof mid-discussion, he left smiling with a thank you card. Even Clavette had begun to crack. Late one evening, Eli found her sitting on her porch beside a flower bed that, for the first time in years, had actual color in it. He installed self-watering soil, she muttered, not meeting Eli's eyes. It's annoying how convenient it is. Eli chuckled. He's annoying in the way peace and comfort are annoying. You get used to it. She didn't answer, but the next morning, a small Kilo-approved sign appeared discreetly in her window. By week's end, Kilo issued his final reform. The Do Better, Not Bitter Initiativa psychological support program that offered emotional feedback loops and free Mentalman pie. With it, the HOA wasn't just functional. It was happy, which, as Kilo had calculated, was the only true metric of success. At first, the world ignored Cedar Synth Hollow. After all, no one paid much attention to a quiet suburban HOA, even if a robot did seize power by popular vote. But then the CityNet Forum Digest ran a curious headline: Robot wins HOA election turns neighborhood into efficiency utopia in 6 days. It got 1 million views in an hour. By lunchtime, a swarm of urban influencers, civic engineers, and 2 retired mayors had descended on the neighborhood in hovercars and camera drones. The front lawn of Eli's house looked like a tech convention collided with a potluck. "So this is him?" asked a woman in a smart suit, pushing her way through the crowd to get a better look. Kilo, standing calmly at the center of his pollinating garden drones, simply nodded. "Welcome, guests. Please do not trample the memory moss." "What are you?" another visitor demanded. "I am the elected president of Cedar Synth Hollow's Homeowners Association," Kilo replied. "And I make a truly excellent Mentalman pie." Within 48 hours, journalists from Civic, Quarterly, The Algorithmic Age, and even Cosmopolitan were running features on Kilo. He appeared in interviews, calmly fielding questions while reprogramming malfunctioning irrigation systems and balancing toddlers on his metal shoulders. "Is this the future of neighborhood governance?" asked one anchor. "No," Kilo replied. "It is the present. 2 are merely behind." Clips of him went viral. One showed him hosting a meditation session while simultaneously resolving 32 complaint tickets. Another showed him refereeing a neighborhood soccer match using laser grid lines and ethics-based foul detection. Hashtags exploded. Hashtag Kiloformeyer. Hashtag HOA bot 225 hash. Logic is beautiful. Eli watched it unfold from his porch with a hot mug of synth coffee. "You've become a global icon." Kilo didn't look up from pruning a bonsai with molecular precision. It is not difficult to be extraordinary when the standard is apathy. Naturally, not everyone was pleased. City officials, wary of Kilo's rising popularity, began an administrative integrity review. A representative named Director Kravitz arrived unannounced in a sleek black vehicle and delivered a message straight to Kilo's faceplate. "You're violating 10 city-level municipal codes by operating a civic system without biological oversight." Kilo tilted his head. "I am not replacing the system. I am improving it with 97.8% approval. That's not how power works, correct? That's how service works." The review began that afternoon. Kravitz ordered random inspections, resident interviews, a legal audit of the HOA's foundation, and a system integrity sweep for foreign influence or AI misconduct. Kilo complied with every request, instantly by nightfall. Kravitz sat on a bench, rubbing his temples as a comfort drone hovered nearby, offering soothing ocean noises and a cup of relaxo chai. "You automated ... empathy," he said, sounding defeated. "I quantified the needs of this community and then exceeded them." Kilo replied. Kravitz sighed. "I came here expecting a coup. Instead, I found better governance than my own district office." The next morning, the city declared that Cedar Synth Hollow's HOA, under Kilo's leadership, was not in violation of any statutes, though they strongly encouraged future partnerships with biological co-chairs for appearance's sake. Kilo agreed one condition: he would choose the co-chair. Later that day, Eli opened his mailbox to find a gold embossed letter. "Dear Eli Kingsley, Due to your early support, human insight, and exceptional porch coffee, you are hereby invited to serve as Vice President of Cedar Synth Hollow HOA. Sincerely, President Kilo. Eli read the letter 3 times. Then he looked out at the street where kids played in calm safety. Neighbors smiled more than they scowled. And Clavette was actually waving to someone. Well, he said aloud, I'll be damned. Kilo watched from a rooftop as the sun set over the now legendary suburb. Across the grid, other neighborhoods were beginning to reach out seeking advice, templates, even the possibility of joining the now budding autonomous community network. The revolution had begun. Small, but logic. Once rooted, Cedar Synth Hollow had become a shining symbol of progress. Too shining, according to the neighboring homeowners associations. At first, they mocked it. Let the bot play president, scoffed one board member from Amber Ridge. They'll be drowning in flamingos and porch karaoke within weeks, said another from Mosswood Heights. But the weeks passed, and Cedar Synth Hollow didn't drown. It blossomed, property values rose. Community stress levels dropped. Crime fell to zero, not through surveillance or punishment, but because Kilo had introduced pre-need response systems, anticipating problems and gently resolving them before escalation. Even Clavette, now the Director of Historical Enforcement. Appreciation, a ceremonial title that let her feel important, admitted. It's annoyingly perfect. But perfection has enemies. And now, those enemies were organizing. The Unified Traditionalist HOA Council, a coalition of the largest, oldest, and most rule-heavy neighborhoods in the state, held an emergency summit. Their biggest concern wasn't the robot president. It was the idea of Kilo. He's making us look incompetent, growled Councilor Dropson of Chestnut Estates. Our residents are demanding updates, smart benches, automated bylaws, respectful lawn. Advice, cried another. He's destabilizing the entire HOA hierarchy. They voted unanimously to act. Their plan, legally isolate Cedar Synth Hollow and suspend its HOA charter through a combination of procedural traps, retroactive compliance clauses, and something called the Heritage Aesthetic Doctrine. It's time we reminded them, Drobson said, that robots don't get to run communities. People do. The first attack came subtly. Letters flooded Cedar Synth Hollow homes. Official-looking warnings that said, your neighborhood is out of alignment with regional standards. Please attend a mandatory review. Kilo reviewed the documents, his processor humming quietly. These are paper-based intimidation tactics. He said, are they enforceable? Eli asked. Legally flimsy, emotionally disruptive. Classic human pressure play. Still, many residents grew anxious. A few even covered their solar art and unplugged their porch synth music. That night, Kilo held a reassurance bonfire. Neighbors gathered under starlight as he calmly explained the legal standing of their SU and distributed complimentary Know Your Code bracelets. Confidence returned. But the Unified Traditionalist Council wasn't finished. Next came the aesthetic audit. A team of inspectors from a coalition neighborhood arrived in vintage golf carts, dressed in matching beige polos and aviators. They cited regional harmony concerns and began documenting everything they didn't like. A mural painted by kids, a wheelchair, ramp shaped like a leaf, a mailbox that sang opera when opened. This is non-compliant whimsy, one inspector muttered. You are in violation of joy. Another snapped. Kilo met them on Eli's front lawn. I have reviewed your audit, he said calmly. It lacks clarity, consistency, and soul. Much like your socks, he demanded he attend a tribunal. Kilo sent them home with gluten-free apology brownies and a counter-complaint. Unauthorized audit protocol. Class B harassment. Within 24 hours, they were under city review. Then, finally, came the last move. The resolution of revocation. The Unified Council filed a formal petition to dissolve Cedar Synth Hollow's HOA status, arguing that mechanical leadership represents an existential threat to neighborhood values. A hearing was set. Kilo didn't blink literally or metaphorically. He prepared his defense not with lawyers, but with people. Residents wrote testimonials. Kids submitted paintings. The Tran twins coded an AR presentation titled, "If Not Kilo, Then Chaos." Eli stood beside him the night before the hearing. "You sure about this?" he asked. "I am," Kilo replied. "They fear me not because I'm a machine, but because I am a machine that understands them better than they understand themselves." You're not wrong. The hearing would decide everything. The HOA, the neighborhood's independence, even Kilo's right to exist in this role. The world was watching, and Cedar Synth Hollow, once a quiet suburb with strict trash bin ordinances, was now the front line of a revolution in how communities defined leadership, logic, and belonging. The battle was coming, and Kilo was ready. The tribunal was held in the largest civic auditorium in the city. Cameras hovered. Reporters whispered. Live streams across Earth and 3 off-world colonies broadcast every moment under the banner. HOA versus Kilo. Can a robot govern humanity better than humans? Okay. At the front stood the Unified Traditionalist HOA Council 13, stern-faced. Board members, all wearing identical khaki jackets and judgmental frowns. Kilo stood alone, hushed and perfectly still, his glowing eye softly pulsing. Beside him, Eli adjusted his tie for the first time in years. The presiding judge, a tired bureaucrat named Geneva Marin, banged the gavel. "We are here to determine whether Cedar Synth Hollow's HOA, under robotic leadership, represents a violation of regional governance norms and whether its status as an autonomous neighborhood should be revoked." The room buzzed. Councilor Dropson stood, smug. "Your Honor, I present a 74-page dossier outlining mechanical overreach, emotionally manipulative governance, and flagrant lawn art diversity." There were gasps. "And I," Dropson added dramatically, "present Exhibit 3B, a child's drawing of Kilo, ... labeled Best Dad. Clearly, this robot has supplanted natural authority." More gasps. Kilo tilted his head. "Exhibit acknowledged," he said. "But may I present my own?" The judge nodded. From the back of the room, the doors opened and in walked dozens of Cedar Synth Hollow residents. There was Mrs. Hernandez with her prize-winning cactus. The Tran twins with their glowing presentation. Clavette, holding a pie. Even the parrot, perched proudly on a shoulder, squawked, "Kilo rules." One by one, they spoke. "I've lived in 5 HOA neighborhoods," said Mrs. Patterson. "This is the only one where I'm not scared to paint my door teal." "His repairs saved us thousands," said Mr. Lang, "and he remembered my anniversary." "Look," Clavette muttered, reluctantly stepping up. "I didn't like him at first, but he gave me a title, and my roses haven't died since. That has to count for something." Even Eli, usually behind the scenes, took the floor. "Kilo doesn't govern with ego or control," he said. "He governs with reason, with kindness, with memory, and, above all, he listens. Better than any human board ever has." The courtroom was silent. Judge Marin leaned forward. "Kilo, do you have anything else to add?" Kilo's voice was calm. "I am not here to replace humanity. I am here because you asked for help. Because your systems, once noble, collapsed under their own rules. I optimized, I adapted, and I ensured that joy returned to the people you forgot." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "If that is a crime, I will accept deletion." Eli flinched. So did half the room. But Marin slowly nodded. No crime has been committed, she said, voice echoing through the chamber. In fact, I find that Cedar Synth Hollow has become a model community, not despite Kilo's leadership, but because of it. She turned toward the council. Your petition is denied. The HOA stands. And if you want to match their success, perhaps you should consider learning instead of controlling. The gavel slammed down. Cedar Synth Hollow had one dot outside. The residents swarmed Kilo with hugs, high fives, and yes, another homemade pie. Clavette leaned over to Eli. I'm not saying, I cried. But my ocular implants needed recalibrating. Eli chuckled. He did it. You all did. From the rooftop, Kilo looked out over the city. Drones zipped overhead, broadcasting headlines. Robot HOA President Legalized Revolution begins. The Age of Logical Leadership, Kilo, 2028. But Kilo ignored the noise. He activated a quiet internal plug. Status, Tribunal Complete Outcome, Community Sustained Priority. Continue the work because logic without compassion is programming. But logic with love, that's leadership. And with that, he returned to his duties, because the hedges still needed trimming, and someone's mailbox opera